Let's bring in Dr. Aminu Hayatu, a security analyst and lecturer at Bayero University's area. He joins me from Kaduna tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. What's your assessment of this attack from a security perspective?
Okay, thank you very much for having me. The last time, if you could recall that you interviewed me here, I have always been on the firm position that unless, a measure is taken that is holistic and comprehensive, we are not likely to see the end of these attacks any soon. And you could see that the attacks are expanding. Initially, we used to, there has been a long silence of these attacks in many of these states, but there's a resurgence now. And the attacks are actually happening, more and more to communities and getting them displaced, their means of livelihood curtailed, and their lives are ended. So I'm saying that it is about the nature and manner of the response by the government. If the government does not resort to a mixture of what I had earlier advised of both kinetic and soft approaches to tackling the security problem, we will continue to see this because people are increasingly being killed, and we've never seen any situation where these conflicting in terms of communal attacks, where these conflicting communities are brought together, in order to identify what is the history of these problems, and what are the antecedents that have occurred, through history, and what is the best way to curtail it. And this will intend a holistic involvement of all stakeholders that have a business in securing the nation. And the other thing is that, the government seems to think that whenever there is attack, once the government responds to the attack and by deploying troops to the state where the attacks have happened, and then they have done their own bit, I think it's not enough. Because last time when we spoke, I told you that even with the deployment and movement of the Chief of Army Staff and his people to Benue State, I don't think it is going to, yield much result in terms of, bringing an end to the menace. And shortly after that, there was attack near Water. Right. So Plateau State now is also, and the network of these attacks, because you can see the same geographical area. So the same people, the same communities that are being attacked, there is a pattern there, right, which we must understand that this problem is peculiar to these communities. And we should be able to really think about the way to comprehensively deal with the problem using a hybrid, approach to security.
That is spot on. That analysis is spot on. And you've mentioned the historical perspective of the crisis needs to be addressed, because this is a long-running crisis between herders and farmers in this region. What will it take to address the underlying issues, including open grazing on farmlands belonging to hardworking farmers?
Yes, it's all part of the solution. A solution is not a one-way thing. It has to be comprehensive. And that is why I said, when you get to involve all stakeholders, you get to see, laying bare before you solutions to the problem. You engage the conflicting communities, the individuals that are in conflict, and then you also engage, security outfits in the country throughout, and then engage other, stakeholders that have the knowledge of how to solve some of these problems. Come together, investigate the problem, because without data, without information, without having information about what really is the cause of this problem and why is it lingering so long, and why are lives being increasingly lost, without people being held accountable, there are stages that this, the conflict can be brought to an end.
Dr.
One of
Hayatu.
which I said is to start with investigations in the problem, and then increasingly, getting into the fabric of the problem and identifying what are the solutions. Unless this is done, I mean, how can you even, hold anyone accountable? When most of the times when the attacks happen, you don't even get to nab a single person responsible for that attack.
Right.
So how do you solve that problem? These people, attacking communities in Plateau State, we are experiencing, even in Benue, guerrilla attacks. They come, they strike, they kill, they burn houses, they slaughter people, and they get back into, the hinterlands. You don't even get to see them.
Dr. Hayatu, even the president said something along the lines of, why hasn't any arrest been made when he visited Benue? Do you think it is high time we...
No, but we should be asking the president.
Is it time
we should be asking the president why any arrest?
To be fair, he's the president. He's not the Inspector General of Police. But that's a conversation we're going to have to come back to. I wanted to know if it is time we have a candid conversation about the nomadic nature of these alleged Fulani herdsmen. How by nature they roam to find food and shelter for their flock. And how that in itself could constitute an invasion of other people's properties and privacy. Is it time we begin to look at how their way of life contradicts, the way of life of other people, and how that is inexcusable, how we can find a bridging gap, so that one community can live in peace and the other one can then, continue their way of life?
Okay, basically there are many dimensions to the problem, and which must be identified. But there are many dimensions to the problem, but basically there are two very primary things that you need to address. The first one is the one you talked about this question of grazing and movements and routes and ranching and whatever. And then the second one is also about the long time grievances that have lived with the people whose families have been killed. These things are sometimes about revenge, sometimes, about, counterattacks and so on. So communities are becoming increasingly radicalized with these missions, with these motives in their mind, that you have attacked me so time and you have killed my grandfather, father, my children and wife and all that. And then after a long time, I will come back to you and take revenge. And after taking revenge, the community will now say, I will also come to take revenge. So this is one dimension. The other one is the one you spoke about the Land Use Act itself has to be revisited and reviewed. Even in our constitution, so that areas where there is this communal clashes because of land issues should be sorted out by way of, legal redress, so that people's attention could be drawn to the fact that this is the framework and with which government is working in order to address this problem. People will know, their areas. People will, for the first time, be aware, things that don't belong to them. And then communities will also be sensitive about what belongs to them and all of that arrangement. So it's very important that anything that must be done must be initiated by the government. And that is why I keep telling you that it must be holistic and it must be comprehensive.
All right,
holistic
Dr. Hayatu.
In the sense that all stakeholders must be able and comprehensive in the way that the
Dr. Hayatu,
of the matter
thank you.
Is excavated.
Before I let you go on very quickly, the bill to ban open grazing passed second reading at the Senate this time last year. But there's been nothing done since then, just lots of disagreements on how it should be implemented, including, we can't keep them keep them constrained in one particular area. There's just a whole lot of debate around it. So I guess they just figured we'll come back to it later. What is it time that this bill gets passed? Should these Fulani herdsmen and some of their representatives be brought to the floor of the Senate to say what the problem really is? Because it looks like the entire country doesn't really know or understand the issues. Very quickly, before I let you go.
It's very good to pass that bill. But the other leg of the bill should be, and I think which is ignored, is the fact that, okay, when you ban, what provision have you made as alternative, to the people you ban their grazing? Because they must stay on because they can't stay in the air. And what next will happen is that even after there is a law that ban their grazing, they will come and attack. So how do you solve that problem? That means you have to find a way in accounting. You don't debit something from somewhere and don't, and then you credit something when you only debit it from somewhere. So when you remove them from grazing, get a plan that you do the ranching, program and all of that, sensitize them, enlighten them about this, educate them, and then let them know their jurisdiction, and you are about solving the problem.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Aminu Hayatu, security analyst and lecturer at Bayero University, Zaria. Thanks for speaking to us tonight.